Every email, every direction came from that person to my team to do the work.
Yeah.
We sealed everything. So whenever there was ever a request for information or to understand more detail, it went to the lawyers first. And then they released what they decided was appropriate for the time, but we kept everything under privilege with the lawyer.
Yeah, and it's not guaranteed.
No.
Even aside from the cyber context, some companies think if I invite my lawyer along, it's magic. Like it's like I sprinkled magic privilege dust over it, and now it's protected.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You have to. The lawyer isn't giving legal advice. There's no privilege.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that changes a few things now, doesn't it?
This is Caffeinated Risk, the podcast for security professionals by security professionals. Here are your two self-proclaimed grumpy security guys, Tim McCreet and Doug Leese.
Our next podcast guest is Brent Arnold, a partner at INQ Law and founder of Capstan Legal. Brent also serves as the chair and a director of the Canadian Internet Society. With over 20 years' experience specializing in cybersecurity, privacy, and data breach response, Brent is a leader in Canada's legal profession. He's presented at a variety of administrative tribunals and in all levels of court, including the Supreme Court of Canada. His expertise lies at the intersection of law and technology, where Brent provides practical guidance on managing complex litigation, cyber risk, and data breach response. Brent has served on the executives of several law organizations' cyber and privacy committees, including the Canadian Bar Association, the Ontario Bar Association, and the International Association of Defence Counsel, an invitation-only association. He is a sought-after speaker and thought leader in the areas of cybersecurity and privacy, technology, artificial intelligence, Web3, and the modernization of our court system. He's appeared on national television and radio programs and has been quoted in the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, and the Canadian Press. Brent has also been recognized as one of Canada's best lawyers in 2025 and was also ranked in the Canadian Legal L Expert Directory for 2025. And now, let's check out our latest podcast with Brent Arnold.
Great to meet you, Brent. Thanks very much. The fellow guitar nerd is one thing.
Yeah.
I was super intrigued by your practice because I've been having a lot of conversations lately about legal and cybersecurity.
My condolences.
Yeah.
And a lot of cybersecurity people talk like they understand what's going to happen in a court. And I used to be actively involved with HTCIA and the police and things like that. So I already know that it's not quite like that.
Yeah.
Maybe for the benefit of those that might listen, what's a day in the life of a cybersecurity lawyer look like?
Well,
other than the boring days with the paperwork.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the good news is it's a good practice if you've got a short attention span and are a curious person, because no 2 days are pretty much ever the same. So for a little bit of context, my practice is sort of 50-50 litigation, and the other half is cybersecurity and data breach response. And so on the litigation side, most of the litigation I do has a tech flavor. Often it's to do with data breaches as well, dealing with, okay, post-breach, this company is suing their supplier because they got hit by a breach and it's had knock-on effects, that sort of a thing. The other half is I'm what's called a data breach coach, and I know your folks will know what that means. I don't like the term. It sounds like I'm giving life advice, which no one should take from me. But basically, I'm the one that gets called in and sort of deals with, sort of like a conciliary kind of a, how do we manage the crisis? How do we sort of deal with this? Sort of pulling together the team, the forensics people, the PR people, if we're going to have to deal with messaging, maybe a ransomware negotiator, that sort of thing. And try to coordinate the whole response in a way that mitigates and minimizes the legal risk and downstream. If I'm successful, and if the cards sort of, if the dominoes fall the way I hope they do, nobody ever finds out about the data breach outside the company.
Right.
That's not always the case. Often these things are happening in a very public way, and so you have to sort of deal with that piece as well. So depending on the day, I'm either stick handling a lawsuit or I'm dealing with a data breach, usually that I've been pulled into later than I should have been, because folks try to handle it themselves for a few days, or it takes a while for them to appreciate how serious it is, or somebody says you really should get a lawyer. And then I do what I can to sort of mop up the situation that I walk into.
Okay. Yeah.
That eerily parallels a lot of career paths I've taken. So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the part that was really interesting for me is that, I've known Brent for a while and we've been at same conferences and even sat on a panel or two. And I really wanted to get folks to appreciate and understand the value of reaching out to you earlier than later.
Yeah.
And what it really means, how can I be more, at least following a different path to be more reactive to this approach? Because right now, Doug and I have seen this throughout our careers. Jesus, we've lived a few of these where, what if we had just done something a little sooner? What would be the value? And can you let us know, Brent, where the value is that you see yourself in this? I know Breach Coach doesn't sound cool, but in this approach, where would you see, or where do you want people to get a hold of you sooner? Like me personally, I want us, as soon as you come out of the bar with a great idea and a napkin, stop. That's the time to bring security in, not Friday at 4:00 when the website launches at 4:30. That's not the greatest time to bring us in. You got to have the same kind of approach from your angle too.
The life of a lawyer, I think, is often like the life of a CISO or someone who manages the security in an organization, in the sense that people come to you after they've already taken something far down the road and they want you to just sort of bolt your piece on.
Yep.
And of course, that's not how it works. We talk about privacy by design. Now we're starting to talk finally about security by design. Yeah. The notion being that whatever it is your business is doing, you should be thinking about the security at the front end of this. And that's how I see it. I mean, ideally, and this is starting to happen more than it used to, I'm getting brought in by companies that have either had a data breach and it was there, but for the grace of God, could have been a lot worse. Let's now look at the future, make sure this doesn't happen again. Or they're looking around, seeing that this is a risk that they need to worry about, and they're starting to think in advance about, okay, how do we plan for this? Let's start doing tabletops. Let's have another look at our policies and our incident response plan. Maybe we should get an incident response plan. And that's good, right? Getting in there before something happens is great. Getting in there after something's happened that could have been much worse, also good, because they've learned the lessons and they see the value. Because this is an area where legal is always like this. It's a sunk cost and nobody sees the value if everything goes right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem. Next best answer, and it's a distant second, is as soon as there's an incident, as soon as you think there's an incident, get legal involved. Because at least that way, when I get in, I can set things up in such a way that is most likely to preserve legal privilege over what we're doing. And if I can take a minute just to focus on that, because that's sort of the part where lawyers add, like, the question you get sometimes is, why is the breach coach a lawyer? Why isn't somebody who's got a technical background? Well, the reason is that as a lawyer, if I'm giving legal advice to a client, I can claim privilege over that, probably. Largely untested in Canadian courts. We're going to see how this plays out over the next decade. But if I get brought in at the beginning, I retain the forensics team. I retain the messaging people. I retain the ransomware negotiator. They take instructions from me, and I give the advice to the client. I'm involved in all the meetings and all those discussions. Right. And what that means is the way that the sausage gets made doesn't get disclosed in a court. Yeah. Hopefully. If I get brought in later than that and the company is already contracted with those people, then what they did with them prior to me getting involved could end up being disclosed in a lawsuit. And why that matters is that communication could be, boy, you guys really screwed up. You should have had this in place. You should have had that in place, on and on and on and on and on and on, right? All the things that speak to liability. Yeah. So that's why it's important that I get in there right at the beginning so that we structure, because what the court's going to look like if you're having a fight over privilege, because inevitably the plaintiff side's lawyer is going to say, I want to see everything. Right. I want everything disclosed in the lawsuit. What the court's going to look at is all of these communications, the contracts with the vendors and all that stuff, was all of this actually done with a view towards giving legal advice about a real risk of litigation. And the court's going to look for indicia on that, right? Did you use, did you use a vendor who's the vendor you always use for cybersecurity? Did they get paid out of your legal budget or out of your ops budget? Were they working under an existing SOW that doesn't really speak to incident response? That sort of a thing. Gotcha. So you got to have a paper trail that gives credibility to a claim that this is all about preparing for the possibility of litigation.
Interesting.
That's the boring part, so thanks for sitting through.
No, I mean, it's kind of cool because years ago I set up an internal investigation structure and, all on the cyber side, but we took direction from our in-house attorney. Every file, every email, every direction came from that person to my team to do the work.
Yeah.
We sealed everything. So whenever there was ever a request for information or to understand more detail, it went to the lawyers first. And then they released what they decided was appropriate for the time, but we kept everything under privilege with the lawyer.
Yeah, and it's not guaranteed.
No.
Even aside from the cyber context, some companies think if I invite my lawyer along, it's magic. Like I sprinkled magic privilege dust over it, and now it's protected.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You have to. The lawyer isn't giving legal advice. There's no privilege.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That changes a few things now, doesn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, that changes a lot, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned tabletops, because now you're talking about a major organizational change, and it's not just hiring another lawyer for the legal department just for cyber.
No.
There's a lot of org structure modifications, and in a large company that is never an overnight initiative, and it's never seamless.
No.
I'm wondering about companies, they maybe want to take a tabletop approach to that, even focus on the legality of some of this. Enough about will this firewall hold, or did we lock down the Active Directory tight enough?
Yeah.
Enough with that. That's a nothing burger compared to you don't even have legal privilege because your IR team is on the ops retainer. That actually is staggering.
Yeah.
I really didn't put that together until you mentioned it.
Well, let me throw a couple of examples at the kinds of things that shake out, either in a tabletop or in an incident that the company isn't prepared for. For example, you crack open your incident response plan, and the first thing it says is get everyone together in the same room. What if you're locked down because it's COVID? Mm-hmm. That was a scenario that we saw a few years ago. All right, get these people around the table. Well, half of these people aren't at the company anymore because we haven't updated the plan in 3 years.
Yeah, shocking. Yeah, like that never happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
How are we going to communicate? Because email is now compromised, and we can't trust our email. We can't trust our Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are we even going to start how are we even going to convene to start dealing with the problem?
Yeah.
Here's my favorite example. I got brought in on a case where the firm we'd done a lot of work with this a credit union. Mm-hmm. And the credit union's back-end vendor, one of its software as a service vendors that all the credit unions in the country were using, got compromised. I get brought in 5 days after the breach has happened, and I say, first of all, who's your forensics vendor? Oh, we got these guys. They're great. I said, okay. Are you allowed to use me and this vendor under your insurance policy? Do you have cyber coverage? And they're like, oh, yeah, we do. I think we do. Yeah, let me check. And, of course, the people who had designed their incident response, and they did have one, thankfully, never spoke to the people who were in charge of their insurance coverage. The insurance policy says you have to use X law firm and Y forensics vendor. So they were already offside their insurance coverage, even though they had done everything right in terms of getting going on the incident response. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that shake out, because what happens with the tabletop is I walk in and start asking some high-level questions, largely about process and personnel and stakeholders. And that's when things almost inevitably start to fall apart. Like, oh, we don't have that. We don't have this anymore. We hadn't thought of that, and so on.
Eesh. Ugh.
So businesses large and small are equally vulnerable. And if the courts are fully aware of that and go, that's the cost of participating in our society, does that change the level of due care on the business, or does it actually ratchet it up?
Well, I think the thing that is easy to lose sight of, class actions are the thing we worry about the most. That's the iceberg. There's lots of smaller icebergs, and the smaller iceberg is a loss of, first of all, reputational damage. Mm-hmm. It's possible no one will trust you anymore. Like, think about what happens when a cybersecurity company gets hit by a data breach itself, and we've seen those, right?
Yeah.
That's a difficult thing to sort of climb back from. Think about, sorry if that's a little close to the knuckle for you.
No, it's
But it happens, right? We've seen them. So there's the fact that your business can die by other means if the breach is bad enough. If the breach is bad enough that, like, let's say it's a ransomware attack where you are it's a double attack where it's exfiltration but and also encryption, and either you don't deal with the threat actor or you get the decryptors and they don't work. I actually had a case recently, first one I've seen, where the decryptors just flat out didn't work after they paid a ransom. Wow. And now that data is irrecoverable. Well, what if that means the business is just dead, right?
Wow.
Or let's say a business interruption that goes on so long that your company goes bankrupt. So there's all those things. And then there's the legal risk of, let's say you get sued by a customer or a business counterparty where you're their main supplier for something and you go down and it torches their whole business.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, you can still have a bet the company sized lawsuit that's just liability to one other person or one other company. So the risks are all still there. And here's the other thing about the class action context. It's really expensive to win a class action. If you're defending a class action successfully and you kill it even at a relatively early stage, you're still spending possibly millions of dollars on the legals.
Wow.
And you usually don't get that back.
Yeah. And when you look at things like the FAIR model, they talk about primary losses and then secondary losses. And in the book, Jack and Jack say, some of these secondary losses can just be a drain for the next 3 or 5 years on your company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people need to understand that risk is about damage and impact, not do you have the latest techno-wizardy thing, because those things come and go.
Yeah.
But lawsuits go on for a while.
Yeah, they can go on forever. Yeah.
As someone who bills by the hour, thank goodness for that. Yes. And the other thing is this: I mean, there isn't a tech silver bullet to stop it, and insurance isn't one either, right? There are some areas in society where you buy insurance to cover off, we're like when you buy title insurance when you're buying a home, right? Yeah. Rather than doing a ton of expensive searches, we're just going to get insurance, and that'll cover anything we have to clean up because there's a screw up with the title. That doesn't work in the cyber insurance context. The cyber insurance isn't going to make you whole from a really, really damaging data breach. And depending on what ends up coming out in the investigation, you might not be covered at all if you're off coverage.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're seeing insurance companies get more aggressive with their insureds when it comes to whether or not they're going to honor the coverage. We're starting to see, I actually dealt with a case where the insurance company was suing a third party saying you suffered a data breach and that impacted our client, so we're suing you on behalf of the client. And in the States, we've seen insurance companies suing their own insureds because when they applied for the insurance, they unintentionally misrepresented the state of their cybersecurity status. They said we have, like in this particular case I'm thinking of, they said we have multi-factor authentication. And it was a simple question. Do you have it? Yes. But the follow-on question is, do you have it on every system? Do you have it on this system in particular? And the answer to that is no. And that system in particular was the one that was the thread, the attack vector.
Well, let's add to the doom and gloom of this. Yeah. Nothing like starting off the year on a dark note.
Yeah. But we'll end on a happy note, though. I promise, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to ask because it's 2026, we're going to ask an AI question because why not, right? And again, it's super new. So I actually had two of them, but I'll start with the chatbot one because it seems it makes the headlines. But we already know, like those of us who work with this, we already know that the AI is not deterministic, and that's a really hard thing to get your head around when you're a computer guy and say, yeah, let's build an app on something that, well, depends on how I feel will be the answer. But we've heard cases of prices being offered and trips and cancellations and rearranging appointments and all these kinds of things that didn't quite go as planned because the AI screwed it up.
Yeah.
And right now people are saying, well, you're the company, that's still a thing. But as people become more and more accustomed to, well, you can't really trust AI, do you see a future where as long as you stick this was generated by AI, so, if it's wrong, not on us. Do you see that becoming a regular defense?
It hasn't worked so far. So we're in the early days. I mean, it's a great question because we're in the early days of lawsuits to do with AI. But one of the first ones we saw, and this one you mentioned the headlines. This one got attention worldwide, even though it's a small claim. In BC, the Air Canada situation, where a person went online and talked to the AI chatbot that was on Air Canada's website. It gave them some wrong advice, and they were out a few $100, so they sued in small claim. The BC equivalent of small claims court. It's a tribunal.
Yeah.
And Air Canada sort of said, well, it's not our fault. We didn't design the chatbot. We just put it on our website.
Yeah.
So the court didn't buy that. The court said, no, it's your website. You're liable for it.
Yeah.
And what the court didn't say, but I think this is really the thrust of it, is if you are using a chatbot to avoid talking to your customers,
Okay.
like if it was an employee talking to the customer and they screwed up and gave them wrong information, you'd be liable. This is no different. I don't care where you got the chatbot. I don't care that it's from a vendor. And I really didn't get into the disclaimer issue. But I don't think you're going to, Canadian law is fairly good when it comes to consumer protection, right? Like, we're not a jurisdiction that says as long as you've got a disclaimer buried somewhere on the website that no one can read, you're good. That's not likely to succeed. Now, that said, I mean, if it's very prominent, like if there was a big warning under it that said, you shouldn't trust this, but here it is anyway.
Yep.
Maybe, but at the same time, why are you using it then? And what's that say about you? Like, here's an unreliable tool that we're going to give you that we don't trust because we can't be bothered to give you an employed.
Yeah, but fill your boots because this is how we're going to save money, right? Yeah.
But the competitive advantage is a real thing. So this was my other AI question. And because we've digitized so much of the business, there's just no end to the volumes of data.
Yep.
And this is a place where grinding through rote data is something that an AI is very good at, but it could still miss something.
Yeah.
But now if I'm sitting there pretending I'm a judge, how is that any different that AI missed something than a minimum wage security guard looking at a video of somebody breaking in and they happen to be watching the World Cup on their cell phone instead of watching the screen? Because that never happens either.
Yeah.
We seem to be very tolerant of humans missing stuff, but we won't accept AI missing something. It's weird that I'm actually advocating, shouldn't AI get a fair shake to be wrong, you know?
Ooh.
I'm laughing because, in part because I used to play in a band and we had a guy that wrote the music for the band and he was a security guard. And what he would do is set out his staff paper for writing the music on the monitors he was supposed to be watching. And
Come on. Like, are you serious? Oh my God.
he wrote some great arrangements.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is killing me. Right? Yeah.
So I think it's. I mean, you've cut to the heart of the matter in terms of what's going to happen with lawsuits on this. Now, our courts have actually been very pragmatic, and this impresses me about our courts. They're not. The judges aren't idiots, so they get, first of all, stuff happens. If I could back up for a second and come at this.
Yeah.
In the cybersecurity context, you don't lose a lawsuit just because you got hacked. You lose a lawsuit because you got hacked, and it comes out that you weren't diligent. You didn't have at least reasonable measures, appropriate measures, proportionate, responsible measures in place. Court recognizes, look, if you piss off North Korea, pardon the language, I can't remember what the swearing policy is.
Oh, we're good. Yeah.
We have none.
We got none. You were good. Yeah.
We'll deal with it in post.
Yeah.
So if you irritate North Korea and they want to get into your system, they're going to get into your system. No matter how good your security is, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
If you have nothing in place and some schmuck with some stuff they got off the dark web and no training manages to hack you, that's different. So what the court's going to look at is how responsible was your AI rollout? What sort of due diligence did you do before putting this thing into the field? What sort of warnings did you give the people that were actually using it or relying on its outcomes? So putting it out there and taking no responsibility for it after having done no due diligence, that's not going to work. And we're starting to see this, I'm sorry to make everything about law, but ironically for me, where we're starting to see the first case law in this is in the legal context, where you have lawyers that have gone into court relying on cases that don't exist because they had an AI program write their brief and it invented it because AI doesn't know the difference between real things and pretend things.
Gotcha.
So we saw a couple of these and we all laughed and said, ha, idiots. And then we saw a couple more, and a couple more, and a couple more. A friend of mine in Virginia is a U.S. lawyer who's big on AI, and he has got a LinkedIn feed that's almost entirely all of these cases happening. Somebody has actually got a master list going that they're posting that's got, I think, over 100 cases in the U.S. and Canada of lawyers walking in, relying on AI irresponsibly and with no due diligence, and in essence lying to the court by accident. And it keeps happening over and over and over and over again. So what happened at the beginning was the courts were like, okay, it's a new technology and lawyers are bad at technology. We see how this could have happened. Don't do it again. Now where we are is we're deciding whether or not we should hold you in contempt of court.
Interesting.
For using this.
Interesting.
Now, to get from slap on the wrist to contempt of court, that took about a year and a half. But that gives you an example of how, like, the law is adapting to say, all right, that's enough. You should have known better. And like, do you not read the news?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's it's going to be the same for anyone else, right? Like, how could you not have been alive to these risks? How can you not have taken some basic measures? So that's where it's going to go. The law will adapt, and the law recognizes, like, the state of public awareness on this stuff is evolving, and with it, what we expect of you will evolve. Same with cybersecurity, right? Like, we, in the early days of PEPIDA, nobody got in trouble, really, right? There would be reports saying, hey, you really should do something about this. And in fact, the government has said, the first several years of this were about public education. We're past that now. Now we're in the enforcement stage, because you should know better by now.
Agreed.
And it's going to be the same vector, I think.
So I want to try something positive. I know. I'm gonna throw this in here, but
I don't know this word.
Exactly. If you were going to, for our listening audience, if you wanted to offer some advice in advance of ever having to call you, or in advance of ever having to pull that trigger, what were some of the things that you would recommend to some of the to a business that's starting to consider, how do I reduce that risk? Like, we're all about risk. We're all about trying to reduce the risk facing a business. But what would you offer as recommendations for folks to start to reduce that risk, so that if that inevitable phone call has to occur and they reach out to you, you would be able to go, Jesus, thanks, guys. You gave me a good place to start, as opposed to, Mother of God, what were you thinking? Everyone out of the room, we're going to start over. Like, what would you give to that business to think about where to start?
We're talking cyber risk in general, not anything to do. Yeah.
Cyber risk in general, yeah.
What I would say is this is three main points, I guess. One, this is everyone's responsibility, all the way up to the board, and really starting with the board. And that has taken a while to get through people's heads.
It still does. Yeah, it still does. I'll be honest, It still does, right?
This is the leading book on, your listeners won't see this. I'm holding up a really fat book called The Handbook of Board Governance. There's a whole chapter in here on cyber risk for board members.
Wow.
So that's good. We're at a stage now where we're seeing that recognized. So point one. This is everybody's problem. Second, everyone needs to be involved in solving that problem, right? So, and you see this when you do a proper tabletop in your incident response plan. This isn't just the IT department. This isn't just the legal department. Everyone gets involved in this, right? From like the HR, comms, everyone needs to be at the table on this, because it's a whole of organizational risk, and it needs to be a whole of organizational approach to dealing with it.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, don't just think of these things in technical terms. This is a process issue. And the way that, and what I always try to tell people is, look, IT and cybersecurity, they're different. These are different disciplines, right? It's like the difference between the military and the police.
Thank you.
I'm getting a big thumbs up from Tim.
Thank you.
Absolutely. One isn't better or smarter than the other. They have different, by design, different specialities. And part of the specialty of cyber, and I'm telling you guys know this better than anyone, and so does your audience. You're thinking about process, not just the toys, not just the tech. You're thinking about process, right? How are things structured? Are things structured in a way that's resilient? Are things structured in a way that's redundant? Are they structured in a way that's responsive and quick?
Yeah.
When I get brought in to do an assessment, I mean, this happens often in the context of, let's say, a corporate, somebody's going to refinance a company or buy a company, and they want to kick the tires on their security. It comes down to things like, are your servers on-prem? Oh, they're in that closet. Why isn't there a lock on that closet? Who has access to this room?
The janitors do. That's, of course. Why would you? Yeah.
Exactly, right? I mean, so it's the whole thing, right? Like, it's process. It's not just the technology, and it's not a technical solution to everything. That's part of it, but it's only part of it. The rest of it is thinking of how you're structuring all this stuff to mitigate risk. That was a long-winded way of saying it. Sorry, but you get the idea.
No, that's awesome. And it helps because we've been fighting this forever. The calendar turns, so we're at 45 years now in security. And still, 45 years in, we still get the siloed approach in my department versus everybody else. I'm responsible for this, and I don't even talk to the other teams. I just do this every day. I come in, I plug away, and off I go. And I'm like, oh my God, this has to stop because we still have large organizations that still don't have that representation at the board level of what the risk is. Yeah. And more importantly, what do you want to do with the risk? Because it's never, I go back to what I'm trying to create is we don't sign shit. That's not our job. Security is not to sign this stuff. But yet, when do we get the audience to explain that here's the risk? And more importantly, here's what we need to do to reduce it. We're still having that fight still today, 45 years in. We're still having that fight.
I think one of the reasons that it's been tough to get an audience, and we've had a number of guests talk about it, where people come in and talk geek and the board goes, I felt uncomfortable. I don't want those people in here anymore. Yeah. The next meeting, the CISO isn't even invited. He just has to send slide decks and somebody else reads them.
Yeah.
But I've also seen the odd post or the odd guidance where don't tell people how many vulnerabilities you patch. That is your job.
Yeah.
You're in the room with the very top level of some of these companies and the courts and everything else. What do they need to hear to make the decisions they need to make for the company? And then maybe we can reverse engineer that into here's what you should be communicating with.
Right. Well, I should defer to Tim on this, but I suspect he'll back me up on this. The key, really, I think, is you have to talk to your board in terms that boards understand. And what boards understand is risk. Mm-hmm. They understand business risk. Yep. So you're not going in and talking about the widgets. You're going in talking about, here's what a catastrophic data breach does to your business. Here's a risk that you need to mitigate. Here are the steps we take to mitigate it. It shouldn't be a technical discussion. What it should be is you need to trust us to do what needs to be done, and we need your buy-in, and we need money. Really, I think that's what it comes down to. But that said, we should be expecting boards to meet us, maybe not halfway, but at least some of the way.
Yeah.
I rarely get what I want when I say this, but what I always want is you should have at least one person on your board who owns cyber risk, one person who really takes the time to get educated on it, really understands it. And you don't, I have 2 degrees in political science. I'm the dead end of a long line of technical, useful men. I change a tire with a cell phone, but I understand at the level that I need to how these things work. If a lawyer can understand this, then a business person can understand this. Yeah. But they need to take that time. They need to get the education, and it's not hard to do.
Well, there you go. That's a positive note. Before we derail it, we should say we're good. Thanks again. This was fascinating.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Oh, this was a lot of fun. And I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm delighted to be joining you. Thanks so much.
You betcha. Thanks so much, Brent. Thanks for listening to the latest podcast from Caffeinated Risk. Make sure you visit our website, caffeinatedrisk.com, to stay up to date on what we've been working on. Our website has bios of our podcast guests, posts about topics we're passionate about, and even a library reference material we find valuable in the work we do every day. And don't forget to subscribe to Caffeinated Risk on your favorite podcast service. This way, you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, and you can listen to our previous guests just in case you missed them. Thanks so much for listening to Caffeinated Risk.